Hey folks, just before we begin, this video is sponsored by Raycon. If you want to listen to my soothing, sexy Northern Irish accent as I explore the creepy and terrifying side of fiction in these lightweight, comfortable wireless earbuds, and even just help out the channel, stick around until the end of the video to hear all about these bad boys. The Ruins is a story guaranteed to ruin any desire to ever travel into the exotic unknown. While none of us are going on vacation anytime soon, summer has always been a time of reinvigoration for many of us thanks to the warmer, brighter weather just before we plunge back into the depressing depths of winter. While there are a fair share of horror stories set during the summer season, it's not the most common practice because the atmosphere doesn't typically correlate with what we perceive as traditionally scary. Yet The Ruins brings a remarkably simple yet malevolent edge to summer screams and tourist terror by combining the natural and supernatural into a sinister Lovecraftian-esque hybrid. The story begins with two American couples vacationing on the Mexican peninsula when they're invited by a German tourist to explore an old Mayan temple in a remote part of the Mexican jungle. Now, if Hostel has taught us anything, it's to be wary of any European stranger inviting us into an isolated part of a country you know very little about, but The Ruins doesn't hide anything about its characters. They're your typical group of relatable personalities who are just as curious and cautious as any one of us. Sure, venturing into a supposedly forbidden tourist zone isn't exactly the brightest idea, but it's only in retrospect do they realize it for reasons I'll explain later. Once they finally reach this exotic destination, very quickly are they forced to the top of the Mayan temple when confronted by a band of armed Mayan villagers, and things somehow find a way to drastically escalate from there.
We have to cut him off.
Cut what off?
His legs.
Tell me you're joking.
There's an interesting juxtaposition to how The Ruins is paced in both the book and the film. Things happen just as sudden as they do slowly and deliberately. At first, it taps into the fear of being under threat in a place that's alien to you, and being unable to calm the tension by explaining the misunderstanding, because as ignorance has historically shown us, we're not exactly the greatest at playing religiously to the rules of a culture and place we don't belong to. However, for as sudden as these circumstances are, the real danger gradually reveals itself as the group begin to notice that the vines surrounding the temple take on an eerie sentient presence as they manipulate and eventually consume them one by one. One way to describe The Ruins is, what if the happening was legitimately scary? You don't hear The Ruins get mentioned all that much, and yes, it's nothing remarkably special, hence why not, but it's still a disturbingly intense body horror that takes an admittedly silly premise and twists it into a convincing psychological survival thriller with a tangible sense of urgency. It's worth noting I'm being kinda broad about the story given both versions are written by the same author, Scott Smith, who had not even finished writing the book by the time adaptation rights were purchased. Both versions are not tremendously different, mostly changes and omissions here and there that leave the film disappointingly condensed in comparison, hence why I highly recommend the book for the grander, more insidious details, yet the key difference is that the book is much grimmer than the film due to its heavier nihilistic themes.
Somebody's coming. Somebody's coming.
Nonetheless, it's a story about survival as the group's leader Jeff, a doctor in training, tries to ration supplies, find a way off the temple, and more or less try to keep everybody alive and sane. One of the main criticisms you'll hear about the film is its gratuitous graphic violence, and while I do believe some stories aim to shock for the sake of dramatic effect rather than any intellectual purpose, here I feel it justifies itself with a constant feeling of desperation, panic, and claustrophobia as the vines encase the temple more and more. It didn't help that at the time of its release, the torture porn craze and even the whole tourist terror concept had become exhausting that the ruins wasn't bringing anything new to the table, if indeed I think it's by far a more exciting concept than many of these other efforts. But it's a situation that warrants a grisly, visceral approach because the characters are fighting against both the agonizing heat, lack of food and water, fearing for their lives, and of course the vines that both figuratively and literally get in their head. Both the book and film get right to the bare bones of random, inconsequential horror that's scary purely because it's scary. It's not trying to make a point of it or allude to some cautionary tale. It's a pretty clever, fantastical dramatization of nature's dense, all-consuming presence, where in the jungle you're no longer the apex in control of the situation. That's what I mean when I say it has a Lovecraftian-esque flair to it. It doesn't have to be about elder gods or cosmic nothingness. It's abstract realism. Here you have these vines that are seemingly omnipotent and capable of mimicking sounds, manipulating people into paranoia and later insanity so they turn against not only each other but themselves, and then there's the fact that the Mayans clearly know what this is but are hopeless to understanding its motive or how to stop it. While it never explicitly states anything, I feel the book does allude to the idea that it's basically some sort of ancient evil that needs sacrifices to appease it, which would explain why the group are forced to stay on the temple as opposed to the Mayans just putting them out of their inevitable misery. I mean, put it this way, why force them into quarantine to stop it from spreading when they're just going to die anyway? It's not like the Mayans are stuck in a moral dilemma, it just seems a bit more suspect than that. After all, it is based on Mayan myth. They believed heavily in deities and sacrificial rituals to appease gods, so it's not impossible to interpret the vines as being controlled by some cursed evil spirit monster god thing. Take the Quincas, for example, a Mayan deity said to protect hunters from wild plants and animals, and if you pissed it off, nature would be unleashed as an aggressor. Or hell, even consider various Mayan sacrificial practices like execution via bow and arrow or bloodletting, which was said to be used as a way of releasing energy used by spirits. Yeah, I'm clearly reaching a little, but it works to keep the mystery very contained and make you question if it's a force of nature or higher power. One of the more poignant elements of the story is how it shows the characters trying to reassure themselves that everything will be okay, because nobody expects something this dire to ever happen to them until obviously it does. There's a sense of delusion and false hope that manifests only for it to later dwindle as the characters succumb to the realization that they're just another random group of unremarkable victims who were never destined to defeat this thing. I know for many it makes it all feel pointless, but it's a core condition for this type of horror scenario. It's meant to embrace a tragedy none of us ever wish to experience, and there are many instances where you think a solution is possible only for it to fail. The thing is, the characters are intelligent for the most part. They don't do stupid things for the sake of drama, and when they do, it's rationalized by their increasing heat exhaustion, dehydration, and the obvious fear of death that surrounds them each passing moment. It essentially becomes a bit of an endurance test, and where the book and film greatly differ is in the conclusion, and it's debatable which ending you might prefer. None of them are positive, but it's necessary to reinforce the harrowing nature of the story. In the film, Jeff sacrifices himself so that his girlfriend Amy can escape, only for her to realise that the vines are growing inside her, while the alternate ending sees a caretaker inspect the vines that have grown around Amy's grave. I find in the version I have, instead of showing the vines inside Amy, the film abruptly fades to black, which could be explained by the director wanting to give us some sense of levity for what he described rightfully as a punishing film. The book's ending, on the other hand, it's bleak to say the least. Instead of Amy escaping, she feels hopeless for losing her friends and thinks that by killing herself, her body can act as a warning to deter any future people from exploring the ruins. However, as she lies dying, the vines drag her away, hence how the group didn't notice any warning signs when they arrived, because they were hidden by the vines. Now, saying it like that sounds kinda daft, but what I really like about it is that it goes back to that Lovecraftian ancient curse ambiguity. Maybe this was nature just being a dick, or maybe it's something bigger, grander, and more divine that we never see. But in either case, that's not what matters. People go missing in dense jungles and forests all the time, and that's what the ruins captures in its uncertainty. It goes back to the old age philosophical question: if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, does it make a sound? Well, in the case of this story, if there's an evil lurking in the jungle but nobody left to reveal it, was it even there at all? Hey, thank you so much for watching and sticking around until the end of the video. If you enjoy what I do here and you want to listen to future content from me in the most affordable, non-intrusive way possible, then I highly recommend Raycon's lightweight, brilliantly sounding everyday E25 earbuds. These little monsters are a brilliant alternative to evil wired vines and heavy contraptions like this, as they sit perfectly in my big, dodgy ears and wirelessly charge up to 4 times on a single charge in this cute little case, along with having several different bud sizes so you can find what best suits your ears. The everyday E25 earbuds also have 6 hours of playtime, seamless Bluetooth pairing, more bass, and a more compact design that gives you a nice noise isolating fit. And of course, as I mention all the time, the most important aspect of all, you get to pick your color. You know what's coming next? Pick the blue ones. You should probably get the blue ones. But hey, pick a different color, let me know. Let's fight about it in the comments below. Raycon earbuds start at about half the price of any other premium wireless earbuds on the market and sound just as awesome as any other top audio brand you know. So go to buyraycon.com/Ryan by clicking the link in the description box below to get 15% off your order. And until next time, while you're ordering those earbuds, stay safe and I'll see you all very soon.